When you think about it, every African in America is a political prisoner. Shit, we was brought here, misguided and thought here. Taught we was less than outlined in chalk here. Listen. The bars that he's looking through, block the stars that he's looking to. So far from the world he knew, it all seems so many miles away. His kids try to hug their pops through the glass during visiting day. Separate and unequal, spent years under federal surveillance for uplifting his people. When the pigs got fed up, the brother got set up. Not at all a criminal, it was all political. Black robes over white sheets hunting for red. Judge passed the verdict, he'd be better off dead. Fam holding on by a thread, but each second bring him one closer to the moment they dread. He holding his head, but wifey is already grieving. State denied both appeals, and I doubt that they read them. Blind justice must be seeing that the scales uneven, cause all they want is a reason to deny us freedom. But in case you didn't know, the ghetto is death row. It's built so we fall like the wall of Jericho. Blocks got spots.
He has been like in my heart, soul, psyche from the time I met him in '69. So to me, it's just our destiny. You know, we have an intertwined destiny. I know that for a fact.
The feeling that I had was that he was going to have to go away from me for a long time. And I wanted to always have a part of him with me. Not to my knowledge that a year and a half later, that he would get a life sentence with a mandatory 25 years to serve. And if we would never have had a baby at that time, then we wouldn't have our son that we have together, who's now 24 years old, and his dad has been locked up since he was 1.5.
It is 8 p.m. and the house is painfully quiet. And as I sit and reflect on my busy day, my thoughts return to death row. Don't get me wrong, I never actually escape, but as long as I stay busy, I can hide from them. You see, my husband has a death sentence, and every day, every minute, I live that sentence with him. The court said they had no alternative but to sentence him to death, and at the same time, they sentenced his family. Was there an alternative? And if there was, would they have shown mercy?
I was working 12 to 14 hours a day, at least 5 days a week in prison, and it was unlikely I would meet someone else outside of work. They didn't automatically associate his name and his background, as I described it for them, with the fact that he wore a prisoner's uniform and not a guard's uniform. When I met my husband, I really had to deal with the fact that my family was very white, middle class, successful. That's what they had wanted for me, to meet someone who was white, middle class, and successful. And of course I met someone who was lower class and Hispanic. Not only that, but he had a record.
I was working at the Tennessee State Prison for Men as a correctional officer. So I met one inmate named Bill. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. My aunt would always say, "Where do you find this trash?" That would be her word, you know. And sometimes I would think, well, maybe I'm trash. If, you know, if this is the kind of person that I'm attracted to. Even my father would say, if there was 100 men in a row and all of them looked exactly alike, you couldn't tell them apart, you could blindfold me, spin me in a circle, and I would go straight to the dud.
Those kinds of relationships that get started in prison are, you know, they're based on a false premise. You know, they're not really based on, you know, the kind of things that normal relationships are based on. They're based on perhaps the woman feeling that here's her chance to help somebody. You know, she's got a captive audience, or in this case, a captive man. You know. So I guess you might say I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to this idea of female maintaining, or not maintaining, but having a relationship with a male inmate.
So sardines, so the food can't be cooked. Sardines actually are high in cholesterol, but these are good to eat.
There is a deprivation that is definitely there in terms of being now isolated, not being able to do what you want to do, you know, not having the funds, you know, because you go, you know, with maybe if you were working out there, you know, you're making at least minimum wage in prison, you know, it's far, far, far from minimum wage that you're going to make.
So then I'll go and get the fresh fruits and vegetables, put those in there, and that's the package.
I deal with a mother who just can't possibly fathom losing her son. That's her baby. He's 20 years old. And she's always in crisis. I always think this woman's going to kill herself. I always think that I'm going to get a phone call that she's committed suicide because she's so fragile. But she can't talk to anybody in the neighborhood. In Delaware, the death penalty is in the country. People believe in the death penalty. So who are you going to talk to? You know, so we try to provide a safe haven where they can cry or laugh or talk about their loved ones for the good that they've done. And we understand and we laugh and we enjoy, you know, the stories that they tell.
My son fell behind everything. It's my favorite. Call his 60s afro. That's sweet. I think he was 3 or 4. Right.
That's Malcolm?
Malcolm, yes. Yes, 3, 4. What do we call his Don King hairdo?
My mother.
Yes. Lillian Ellis. And this is Wilson, North Carolina in Wilson. She was about 30-something here because I remember when she got dressed up to go out that night. So I was about 9 or 10. She's about 30, I guess. So it was, and she was so beautiful. Going out and have fun.
And the one above is your daughter?
It's my daughter, Adaleta, when she was about 12. And now she's, as she says, 30-something. 30-something.
Uncle, who's an ex-correction officer, and he kept saying, well, I don't understand why you would put yourself in this predicament. You know, you don't fit the profile of a convict's wife. I said, what is that supposed to mean? You know, well, you're not fat, you're not stupid, you got a job.
2 of my sisters, my oldest sister and my youngest sister, neither of whom I was close to throughout my life, they both disowned me, basically. I cannot go into their homes. They do not want to come to my home. They don't want to know my husband's name, where he lives, what he did. All they want to know is that when he comes home, we go as far away as possible.
I told my children, and my youngest son, Harley, was the most supportive. He said, Mom, I have never seen you happier. He said, and you've never been so grounded, and I want to meet him. So I took him down, and he fell instantly in love with him. I told my sister, who said that I was very giddy every time I talked about him. And she said she was happy for me. And I told my parents. And my parents went down and met him and fell in love with him.
Since he's 18.
Sweetie.
Just sweetie. What else is it? When my uncle was telling me, he said, well, most convicts' wives, they're stupid, they're fat. I said, well, I don't fit that picture. Does your sister fit that picture?
I met Abdullah through my work, actually. And the interesting thing about that is I was in a really good relationship with someone that I've been involved off and on with for years, who took very good care of me, but I didn't love him. And I've actually never loved anyone. You know, I've always been in relationships that were very non-committal. I always had a very hard time being faithful because of something that had happened to me. I was raped when I was 16. So I went on this crash course to ruin all men and make them pay for that rape.
People tell you something for so long, you begin to believe it about yourself. And I was raised in the 50s, in the 60s, and back then it wasn't popular to be dark-skinned with short hair. You know, if you wasn't light-skinned with long hair, you didn't get no boyfriends, you got teased, you got talked about. And my self-esteem was low. My mother was even of that same venue. She liked if you was light-skinned, you know, she loved my friends. She would even tell my girlfriend, I don't see why y'all run around with Andy. You know, y'all could be a model or something.
Every relationship I've had with a man, whether he was a family member, a friend, a man I dated, a clergyman, a psychiatrist, has abused me. Every man.
You begin to feel like you have to settle for whatever comes by. First person tell you they love you, you're like, you know, he loved me, he loved me. and you don't have that insight to look beyond that. And having that kind of concept about myself in the prison, all the inmates love you. Oh, baby, you sure do look good. Well, I guess so. You know, you haven't seen anybody and whatever, you know.
I know that I am safe with my husband behind bars. I have come from an abusive marriage. I was a battered woman. I survived that. But I lived with that husband. I lived with him. In this way, because my husband's behind bars, if he chooses to abuse me, there will be witnesses. If he lays a hand on me, I will make sure he's arrested for a new crime, and I will make sure to divorce him, and he'll pay the lawyer's fees.
Kenyatta's position has been non-participation with the authorities, so to speak. And in order to get married, you have to really participate with the authorities. So the I'm not wanting to get married is in the same way as of non-participation. That is to say that, you know, he's there under protest, and to go through all these things as if it was somehow normal or whatever, that isn't something that we're willing to do. And just the whole idea of freedom, you know, we just want to make love in free conditions. Of course, freedom is relative, but we are choosing how we want to relate to it. And we want to relate to it in terms of lovemaking and our physicalness, not under the tower of the prison or the guns of the guards. No, on the beach, somewhere in the moonlight. That, for us, is what we want to do.
So I met Abdullah because he wrote a letter to our agency. And, you know, he wanted some legal information. So my coworker and I went to the prison. And the first time we tried to see him, he didn't come out. And I said, you know, I'm not going to come back and try to see this guy. So about 2 weeks later, we went back down, and we were waiting for like an hour and a half. And the counselor said, and we were getting ready to leave, and the counselor said, don't leave. He has an execution date, and he's talking to his attorney. So I thought, I don't want to meet this guy. He's got an execution date. We don't have enough time to get him what he needs, and I don't want to get involved with this. So we were turning around to leave, and this man comes down the hallway, and he had the most pensive eyes that I've ever seen. And he had this walk about him. I mean, I turned around, I was standing in the middle of the hallway like this. My coworker kept pinching me. She said, what are you doing? I said, nothing. So he walks up and he says, Assalamu alaikum, my name is Abdullah Amin.
It was a crime that was committed upon my mother, and made her totally blind. And that night, that day when she was taken to Shands Hospital, was the day that I wanted Michael. I wanted somebody to share my pain. I wanted somebody that I can grieve with, that knew me and knew my mother, and that I loved. And nobody else, even the guy I was living with at the time, couldn't feel that. So Michael had been calling me, and I looked at my telephone bill, and I got the number that he was calling me from the prison, knowing that you can't call, you can't call these people. They can call you, but you can't call them. But out of desperation, I dialed that number, and I just held the phone and let it ring and let it ring and let it ring until somebody picked it up to use it. And when they picked it up to make their call, I was on the other end, and I asked them to go find Michael Anderson for me. And they did, and he couldn't believe that I was on the phone. And we talked, and I told him what had happened to my mother, and I let out all my grief on the phone to him, and that rekindled our relationship. It was like I knew that's who I wanted to be with. I was ready then to commit my life to him totally. No other boyfriends, nobody else.
So I went in the room and we interviewed him, and you know, he told me the information he needed, and I left. But I left with this feeling that there was something about him that was so strong, like this connection. And it was the most bizarre thing, because for me, who's very non-committal and not really interested in anyone except men, except what I could get from them, he had nothing to offer me, you know, to really bond us. So I got him the information. I went back down, and they told me they had moved him over to MSU, which is where they move you when you have an execution date. And I got really upset. So I went over to MSU, and he said, I'm going to get a stay. Don't look so distraught. And I said, I'm not distraught. You know, I just met you, and, you know, and at that point, I was just kind of maybe flippant. And we started talking. We talked for about 3 hours. And we had so much in common. It was like he had been through places that I had been through. We had even went to the same clubs. We hung around in the same type of areas, and we frequented the same bars, and just knew some of the same people, which I thought was odd. So I kept going back and forth. You know, he's a fighter, you know, and he, out of the 17 people that are on death row in Delaware, he has filed a class action suit for everyone. Everything he does is for everyone, not for himself. And over the course of about a year, I really got to know this man. I mean, I met his family, I knew his bad parts, and I found that at times I started opening up to him. I told him about my rape, which I didn't do. I started telling him about my children, and we just got to know each other. It was like, in this odd place, we became best friends.
When he asked me the first 5 or 6 times if I would marry him, I said no. I told him I would never marry an Hispanic, and I would never marry anyone behind bars, because I wouldn't consort with the enemy. I was working for the Department of Corrections. I couldn't.
We never did anything that was that would be a breach of security, but I knew that I was becoming so involved with him that I couldn't perform my job professionally. So I went to the warden and the bureau chief and I said, listen, I gotta go. You know, I really have feelings for this person that's incarcerated here, and I don't think I can do justice to my job. So I left. The bureau chief said, can I talk you out of this? You're so good at what you do. I could help further your career, you know, don't do this, just don't do this. The warden said, don't blame gal. He said, I never would have thought it, because I remained professional. You know, I didn't try to sneak in closets and say them. I didn't try to do anything that was you know, I was getting to know him, but it wasn't out of the realms of my professional duty. And when I realized that I couldn't stay professional, I knew I had to leave.
Lake Correctional was building a chapel. When I go see them on Saturdays, they building that chapel. Guys up there tapping the roof, and they're building a chapel, and we're going to get married.
I applied for the license. I went to the little white chapel, I think it is, talked to the minister, said, listen, this man's incarcerated, I have power of attorney, I have someone that can stand in as, you know, in his place. He said, you have power of attorney, you don't need someone to stand in your place, you can just have a witness.
He had to promise never to use violence with me or around me. He had to promise never to use any kind of alcohol or illicit drugs around me or while we were in the relationship. He had to agree to undergo sterilization as soon as the state would allow or as soon as he came home. He had to agree to pay all the lawyer's fees if I decided to divorce him. And he had to agree that if he was going to have an affair with someone else when he came home, knowing that was virtually impossible while he was in prison, that I would leave and he would pay the lawyer's fees.
We got married on the 10th without him there, and I got married and he was in prayer. I went back to the warden because he didn't know I did it, and I said, you're going to be very upset and you may tell me I can't come back in, but I married Abdullah. And he said, blame gal. He said, what the hell have you went and done now?
And one day in the visiting park, I got on my knees and asked him to marry me in the room full of people, and he was so embarrassed. He said, girl, get up from there, people looking at you. We set the date for October the 19th, and October came around, and I got a call from the prison, and it was a sergeant that knew my husband. He asked me, you got a cake for your reception? I hadn't thought about none of that. I had bought a bouquet and that was it. He said, well, I said, no. He said, well, you got one now. You got a 3-tier cake. You know, we're going to have the guys in the dining room bake it. He also asked me, did I have any boutonnieres for the guys, and did I have any, he said the florist down that was going to donate some flowers and in this chapel. And I found out that I could bring my pastor, bring in a video camera, found out that I can bring in my family, I can bring my church family to sing, bring an audio tape to play the march, and have my son the rice to throw and everything. And my husband could have wore a suit if he wanted to, but he didn't want to. And has been the only wedding in the state of Florida like that, because in the state of Florida you're only allowed to have their minister, one witness, and the person you're marrying. And they never have had a wedding like that before. That was the only one of its kind, and I got the pictures, and everybody bring cameras, had a reception, let us bring food in, and it was amazing. I knew that's who I wanted to be with. I was ready then to commit my life to him totally. No other boyfriends, nobody else. I was ready then to, knowing in the Department of Corrections in Florida, there's no conjugal visits, there's no intimacy allowed. I was ready to, knowing that, I was ready to commit myself to him. I told him that I wanted to be to him everything he needed me to be, for as long as he needed me to be that. And strange enough to him, he had been praying that same prayer, asking God to send him somebody to be everything he needed them to be, for as long as he needed them to be that. And when those exact words came out of my mouth, he realized that he could trust me, and that it was God's gift back to him to send me back into his life.
I question God a lot, and I don't mean to, but I wonder why he would send something so perfect into my life only to possibly take it away.
So I got married on a Saturday, and then when I went back on Sunday, they said, oh, you come back for your honeymoon, huh? So I have the weekend to adjust to being married, and then I had that week to adjust to being married and not having my mate with me.
The first time I went to see him on a visit without my badge, it was an eye-opener, because when I first went to go to visit him, the first thing, the guard who had talked to me wonderfully a couple months before called to see if I was barred from the prison, because it's unusual, you know, to have worked there and then come back to visit, and they told me no, she's allowed to visit. So everyone looked at me real different, you know, and people start whispering about me, you know, and and I didn't know if I liked that feeling. And I used to see visitors come in, and I used to feel so sorry for them. And then I was now a visitor, and I really didn't know if I liked having to be winded down and have to go to a certain place and have someone look at me a certain way. I really didn't know how to respond to that. I wanted my badge back. You know, I wanted to be able to just walk through the prison door and not have to deal with them looking at me the way I saw them look at other people.
The guards expect you to, you know, sit, you know, with your hands in front of you, and they have a conversation for all those number of hours. And sometimes you just want to hug, you want to hold hands, you might want to have a kiss here and there. But the whole thing about it's not supposed to be anything like it extended or close or for a period of time. And so they watch the, you know, the guards are always watching everybody. If they see a person has been in an extended embrace, they will come. Sometimes it all depends on who the guard is, would just say, you know, you're not supposed to do that, or they just bring the paper over and say visiting directive number whatever says such and such.
New York and other states are somewhat behind the times in terms of that whole idea of the need for, say, sexual gratification. In the Department's defense, they have family reunion programs, you know. And some people call it, and we don't call it that for the reason that we don't want it to be focused on the sexual aspect. We call it family reunion as opposed to conjugal visits, okay? Because conjugal visits kind of connotes, well, it's just a sex thing, you know? But, you know, that's why we say, hey, you know, you can have a family reunion with your mothers, your relatives, your children, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, and in fact it can't be, under our rules, it can't be girlfriend.
I would say my fondest memory of my life with my husband over the past 10 years, we've known each other 10 years now, was the first time I celebrated his birthday with him with a party. It was on our trailer visit. We'd had many. We'd been together now, by that point, 4 or 5 years. But this fell on his birthday, so I bought a cake, decorated it, got candles, got a big card, bought him some presents, and I hid everything in the groceries. Of course, when I came to the prison with the groceries and everything, he likes to unpack so I don't have to do any work. So he wanted to unpack everything. And I kept saying, no, I'll touch that bag. I'll unpack that bag. It's special. It's, personal things for, that time of month, honey. Don't touch that. So when he left the room, I very hurriedly got the cake all together with the candles, got everything out on the table, and then I screamed, honey, come quick. Oh my God, I need help. And he came out of the bedroom, and I was standing there with almost nothing on but a little tiny negligee, my little slipper feet. And I had this cake with candles, and he cried. He literally broke down in tears and said no one had ever had a birthday party for him before, and he had turned 30.
If my husband and I weren't able to have trailer visits, okay, now not to say that I wouldn't love them, okay, but then that intimate part comes in, that intimate part, okay, maybe I have to do a little something on the side just so I can be sane on this side, My mom has never been with this brother and has no chance of ever being with this brother unless they let him out, and we're knocking on wood that that happens. So I asked her, why are you with him? But she said, because it makes her feel good. This is something she wants to do. And you can't do anything about that.
I thought everybody could put pictures in their head. Maybe they can't. Sometimes they call it visualization. So I can visualize Kenyatta. I say, sometimes we just go in the shop, buy groceries, washing dishes. We say we read the New York Times, because I love the New York Times. And then we spread the New York Times on the floor. We make love on the New York Times. Our eyes lock, our fingers lock, our spirits lock. In the lockdown visiting room, we have sex through eyes, breath, words. In keeping with the visiting room directive, inmates and visitors may put arms on shoulders. We draw close. My visiting room beautiful diva outfit is carefully chosen to allow access. Big sleeves, deep pockets that ain't pockets, elastic waisted skirts, all kinds of clothing openings so your fingers can find other openings, and they do. We are in our world, far beyond the prison walls.
I'm in the movie house, I'm watching a movie. Over there they hugging up, over there they hugging up, over there they hugging up. It's dag, I'm trying to watch the movie, but I'm all around, I'm all in everybody's business. But it goes.
Yo, it's kind of crazy, man. True. Yo, I was building with my mans, right? Yo, he had just came home, right? He was like, yo, incarceration, that's the new plantation. A new kind of slavery, a new foundation. And it would even cost you much. The project is a slave ship, the corner is the auction block. Yo, hold on, son. Yo, I was like, yo, you can't be serious, right? He was like, yo, son. Police officers enlisted to oversee us. We victims of a crooked system that's meant to defeat us. Get rich, some snitch, and it's just the start. Forefathers sold off their own flesh and blood. We on the bus up north, of course it's the middle passage. Why else you think they shackle and chain us and call us savage? The state penitentiary, century slave quarters. The warden is the master that force you to take orders. So they call it solitary confinement inside a hole. Similar to slavery, life without parole. And we still treated less 3/5 a human being, cause the new plantation is owned by Europeans. There's nothing new under the sun. What they do has already been done. When they come up, you better run. Our people just wanna be free, just wanna be free.
The thing about freedom is that Kenyatta has an extreme idea about it. Is that it has to be that and not a little halfway. And like parole is like a little halfway freedom. Our refusing parole position, as far as we're concerned, is absolutely right. Why? Because Kenyatta is innocent of the charges for which he was convicted. The cop tried to kill him. The trial minutes indicate this. He says, somebody come get me before I kill this nigger. And he told the other guy on the subway platform, hold his arm, I can't hit him anymore, because he had hit him so many times with the billy club. So to be innocent, you know, because this guy tried to kill him, and then to go before a parole board is just totally unacceptable for us. Because what does it mean to go to the parole board? You say, in effect, I'm filled with remorse for what I did. You know, you let me out and I won't do anything again. I'll report to you every week if you say, every day if you say, every month if you say. I give you carte blanche to come to my house to see whatever. Before I travel, I'll check with you. We see it as continued incarceration, although like minimal. It's like maximum, then there's medium, and then there's minimum incarceration. That is for us extended incarceration. It is still being in state custody.
He was down on the corner where everybody hang out, and him and some more guys, and they were standing on the corner, and the police stopped them and want to know what they were on the corner for, because there's a law in Tennessee. It's a 1930-something law. It's called a sidewalk law that prohibits so many people from congregating on the corner together. Well, my husband had a gun. So when the police jumped out, of course, they panicked. Everybody went to running, and the police officers let the dog loose. And he ran into the doorway of this building, and they let the dog loose on him, and he shot the dog and killed him. Well, it was like you killed a police officer. For 4 days, it was the front page news in the newspaper, even though he had gotten shot 5 times after he shot the dog. It was like the first day, it was the officer with his little leash, and he's looking all down on the training field. His dog is gone, you know. The second day, it was his wife. Her big picture was on the front page with a tear running down her eyes about how she had, you know, Bobo was a family friend, and then the next day it was the kids sitting in front of the empty dog bowl. You know, they just milked it for all it was worth. And out of that, by him being a prior felon, he received a life sentence.
I was on the street with a girlfriend of mine the other day, and she said, "Oh, is your husband coming home?" Because I hadn't seen her since maybe a little time after the wedding, and I said, "Oh, he's coming up for board in February." She said, "Oh, I hope it goes good." I said, "Yeah, I hope it goes good too." So when I saw her 2 weeks ago, she says, "Oh, what happened?" I said, "Oh, he won't be home till 2000. 2000? 2000? I said, "Yeah, 2 more years. 2000. So for me, I broke it up. It's like in 3 more months, it'll be 99, okay? And I have these things to do, this goal to set. In 9 more months from that, I'll probably be delivering a child. In 3 more months from that, it'll be 2000. So if you break it up, it's not like 2000. Like how much? 600 some odd days? It's not that long.
Our relationship ended when I went to visit him one day, and the guards called me by the name of another woman that had been up there visiting. Had a program one summer called Children's Day, where the kids came and stayed with their fathers, and my group, Families of Incarcerated Individuals, we took all the women, and we went to dinner and to a movie, to lunch and a movie, and then the guys stayed, they had carnival rides and everything. Well, that evening on TV, of course, the news media was out there, and my husband was one of the spearheaders of this program, and there he is on TV, and he's holding these children, you know, and they're talking about how your kids feel about being here and this, that, and the other. And I'm looking, now those children don't look like my children. You know, who are these children? Later on, I found out that it was some girl that he had been seeing that would come visit, and they were her children.
We are quite realistic in our expectations. Life's going to be awful. He's coming home from doing a life bid. He hasn't been out in the streets in too long. He doesn't know how things work. Things are all upside down and backwards inside out. And we're dealing with cultural issues. He comes from a very uneducated, poor family living in the ghetto in East New York. I visit them maybe once every year. It's difficult. We can't even communicate on the same wavelength, much less can we get together in the same room.
Now, being on these trailer visits, you know, we kind of get a feeling of what each one of us is talking about. I'm not a morning person, so I'm gritting my teeth when he says, "Wake up, babe, wake up." You know, I don't want to deal with that. And being single and living a single life, so to speak, sleeping alone all these years for the last 7, all from me, all right? But trying to hold that in restraint. And that's just the weekend, so we know we have to work on something for this long 7 days a week stuff. And him being incarcerated for 15 years, he sleeps alone, has slept alone for 15 years. The slightest noise, he's up like this. I wasn't sleeping at one point, but we were laying in the bed, and he was sleeping. He woke up, he looked at me like a stranger, and then he went on to sleep.
He has a life sentence. He may never come home. He may not. If he does come home, I don't know if, well, I've often thought maybe we'll get a 2-bedroom apartment, a big 2-bedroom apartment. That way, if we have an argument or something, I can go in another room and not have to worry. I can slam the door and lock it if I think he's getting too violent.
He should be home in 2000. And right now, while he's in prison, he makes glasses, optical glasses, prescription glasses, and he's very good at it. And he just got a promotion. So, you know, he kind of makes his own money, which is a plus. You know, my husband does make money, okay? And in the future, I see myself retiring from my job in 4 years and us being in business together at an optics store, preferably out of state.
1988, that's 10 years, right? 10 years ago. This is from Kenyatta to me. My dearest, greatest lover, what can I say of our precious and treasured time today?
And when I say I, you also know I mean we. It was so fantastic, so warm, beautiful, sensual, sexy, loving, so full of us. Believe me when I say this, there is no greater loving love. My heart was fluttering for nearly 20 minutes after we kissed our final goodbye. It was great holding you inside my arms like that, so close and so tight. With you, inside you, I have a true best friend. I want to thank you for the love, the live black world of unconditional love your being inside my life have given me. In you, I found myself, and can't nothing beat that kind of self-discovery, sister.
We're still accumulating the letters. They're still have my drawers over there. I think my 1996 drawer and my 1997 drawer of letters, and collected for 1998. Right. And hopefully this will be the last year. You know, really, it's time for him to come home. It really is.
Your fingers glide through my hair, a sweet breath inside my head, a gentle strength that draws me near. Words of passion I love to hear with love and care. My fingertips against your face, my hands search for a resting place, moving together with so much grace. Let's not haste, touch me there. with loving care. With loving care. Close your eyes. For the magic carpet ride.
The ward and I have a really strange relationship because I really genuinely like him. And he really genuinely likes me. And he could be the person that could execute my husband.
Oh, he won't be home till 2000. 2000? 2000? I said, yeah, 2 more years. 2000. So for me, I broke it up. It's like, in 3 more months, it'll be 99, okay? And I have these things to do, this goal to set. In 9 more months from that, I'll probably be delivering a child. In 3 more